It goes from hobo to hooker and then seasonally Halloween.
That's the intro. See that? Yeah. I just do what I do. See me? I just do what I do. Yeah. Check. Let me flip this script. I feel.
Well, hello, friends. It is me, Business Barbie. It's nice to have you back. I would like to start by addressing some technical issues that have been brought to my attention by you.
Because I was having a technical issue.
I was told that the sound isn't as good as it should be. So I did the only logical thing. I had the microphone bedazzled with rhinestones.
Don't forget the glitter!
That should take care of it. As always, I'm coming to you with an absolute banger of a topic.
Is it a banger?
What is inflation? If you didn't know what to talk about on your next date, well, now you do. Inflation is the decline of your purchasing power. Are you excited yet?
I'm excited, you're excited.
You need to know the basics of inflation to know how it will affect your wallet over time. You know I like graphs. Explaining to you what happened to a cup of coffee. In 1970, it was 25 cents. And now, in 2022, it is 185, according to the graph. But I think we both know that 185 is the tastes like water, we don't care coffee that you get at the 7-Eleven. The reality is,
One $12 pumpkin spice latte.
now let's dive right into inflation. First big surprise, there are 3 different kinds of inflation. You didn't know that, and that's okay, because that's why I'm here. I'm telling you. The first kind of inflation is the demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation is the simplest of inflations. It's really just the concept of supply and demand. There isn't enough supply for the demand, so the prices go up. Why? Well, because they can. That is economics 101. They will always charge you whatever somebody's willing to pay.
I am greed.
So if there isn't enough milk, it goes to the highest bidder. But the same is true on some more irrelevant purchases, like, for example, your rare Nike sneakers. You are willing to pay a premium for those because there aren't enough to go around.
I don't know, sneakers. It's probably sneakers.
And then there is cost push inflation, which really just means that it has gotten more expensive to produce a certain good. So there's no other choice but to raise the price for the end consumer, which would be you. So look at the graph. Imagine you make a living selling helium balloons. Helium doubled in price, so your balloons double in price. And before you laugh, that has crippled the entire circus clown industry.
I'm a sad, tragic clown.
Then there is built-in inflation, the good kind of inflation, the one that we expect, where everything goes up.
I am gonna be rich.
Means the price of goods rise over time, but your salary should too. That's why it's so vital and important to actually renegotiate your salary every year or every 2 years based on the inflation rate. And then there is a fourth part of inflation, a sneaky, unofficial part that I want to bring up. Shrinkflation. Great term. Look at the graph. It basically really just means that companies are fooling you by leaving the package the same size, but all of a sudden there are 5 less Pringles in the can, and I don't know about you, but I'm offended.
The bag is empty.
Also, according to Fritos, I am now a family of 3 because I eat that pack in one sitting. Economists say too much inflation is bad, too little inflation is bad.
Is that bad? Is it bad?
But the truth is, it actually really depends on where you are in life and what you got going on in your private finance. So we got to dive into that.
So is inflation good or bad? Well, it's not that easy. If you are a saver, you can see your piggy bank shrink right in front of you. But if you are a borrower, the same goes for your debt. The value of your debt shrinks in the rate of inflation.
And without wanting to put on my tinfoil hat, well, who is the biggest borrower? Could it be the government? The way that inflation will influence your life depends on where you are in the food chain. Are you low income? Are you middle class? Or are you wealthy? Because that changes everything. So let's look into all 3. A low income household normally spends the lion's share of their income on necessities. We are talking food, shelter, electricity. And when they're done with all that, there's really just a small surplus that they have to play around with. Now, if inflation hits, there's no surplus, and people struggle to meet their basic needs.
That's not fair.
The average energy burden for a low-income household is 3 times higher in relationship to the income than a middle-class family has to bear. Unfortunately, among the spending categories hit the hardest by inflation are the basics. It is food, it is energy, it is shelter. So that leads to the poorest being hit hard.
Yeah, that is fucked up.
Well, let me do you one better. Here comes the middle class. Look at that. Our good old middle class, hardworking people, they have savings. So now they look at their savings and they shrink.
Where is my money?
They look at their expenses and they balloon.
We can't afford that.
So the middle class is really hit the hardest by any inflation because they get it from both sides. And they know it. In a study, 75% of all middle class families said that their income cannot keep up with their expenses. We gotta talk about the last class, the rich people. Look at him sitting there on his money bags. Obviously, wealth has different components.
He has cash on one side, and yes, that will shrink just like yours or mine. But he has way more assets on the other side. And those always tend to go up in an inflationary environment. So worst case scenario, the poor rich guy experiences what we call a wash. He loses about as much on his cash that he gains on all of his assets.
So that is called wealth management. You don't need it until you have wealth. But once you do, you normally hire somebody to keep exactly that balance.
So what's the verdict?
It is very hard to come to a bottom line of this topic because it depends so much on the individual. But I do want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes that tackles this topic and gives you some room for thought. Keynes said, by a continuing process of inflation, government can confiscate secretly and unobserved an important part of the wealth of their citizens. Well, look at you. You made it to the end of the video. Good for you. Learning and improving. When your guidance counselor said you're a complete screw up, he was wrong. Here we are again at my favorite part, the public service announcement that has absolutely nothing to do with anything we just talked about. It's just things that need saying. According to the comment section, I cannot be taken seriously as a financial advisor because I dress provocatively. I mean, I don't know where they get that from. That's ridiculous. I am, however, not immune to criticism, so I do think about these things. And I realize you guys don't know me well enough yet to know that I exist on what I call the age scale.
So now that we're slowly getting acquainted, let me walk you through the age scale. It's where I exist. It goes from hobo to hooker and then seasonally Halloween, but mostly hobo to hooker. And my YouTube outfits are pretty much in the middle.
In conclusion, what I'm trying to say is, you as the viewer may look at me and say, ugh, I wish she would put on a sweater. While everybody that ever met me looks at the video and says, oh, look at her, she put on some clothes.